everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. I am so honored to be joining you here today at CFB Trenton, which is on the traditional territory of the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte, also known as Kanien'kehá:ka community of the Tyendinaga. This is my first visit to this community since being appointed as the Minister of National Defence, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to learn more about how the Canadian Armed Forces members stationed here are keeping Canada and North America safe and helping to uphold our collective security, including the work that they are doing in response to the crisis in Ukraine. Since Putin launched his full-scale invasion of Ukraine 2 months ago, CFB Trenton has served as the departure point for much of the military aid that Canada has been providing to Ukraine to fight and win this war.
Malgré une situation en constante évolution, je sais que vous restez prête à continuer à défendre le Canada et nos alliés, amis et partenaires. Je me joins à vous aujourd'hui pour annoncer la prochaine phase de la réponse des forces armées canadiennes à la guerre en Ukraine.
To help address the growing crisis at the border between Poland and Ukraine, I am announcing today the deployment of up to 150 Canadian Armed Forces personnel, with approximately 100 personnel in the immediate term who will assist Poland's efforts to support and care for Ukrainians fleeing violence. The majority will come from Edmonton and Kingston and through here in Trenton in the coming days.
Pour aider à faire face à la crise à la frontière entre la Pologne et l'Ukraine, j'annonce aujourd'hui le déploiement de 100 membres des forces armées canadiennes qui pourraient être augmentés jusqu'à 150 membres pour assister la Pologne dans ses efforts de soutien envers les Ukrainiens qui fuient la violence. La majorité du groupe partiront d'Edmonton et de Kingston pour transiter ici à Trenton dans les prochains jours.
Now, over the next few months, our military will provide support across 3 lines of effort. First, we will be deploying armed forces members to reception centers across Poland to assist with the immediate care and processing of Ukrainian refugees. This is the largest component of our deployment to Poland. Our people will provide general support, spiritual services, and limited medical care enabled by Ukrainian-speaking CAF personnel. Second, we will deploy a number of members in support of a Polish-led humanitarian assistance task force. We will work with military members and other government representatives from Canada, from Poland, and from other allies to synchronize efforts from more than 100 multinational humanitarian agencies to ensure that Ukrainians fleeing the war receive the best support possible. And third, we will assist Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada by acting as a liaison with the Polish Defence Forces as IRCC works so that thousands more Ukrainians can continue to resettle in this country.
Premièrement, nous allons déployer des membres des forces armées canadiennes dans des centres d'accueil en Pologne afin de contribuer aux soins immédiats et au traitement des réfugiés ukrainiens. Il s'agit de la composante la plus importante de notre déploiement en Pologne, Notre personnel fournira un soutien général, des services spirituels et des soins médicaux limités avec l'aide de membres ukrainophones de Forces armées canadiennes. Deuxièmement, nous en enverrons une partie à l'appui d'une force opérationnelle d'aide humanitaire dirigée par la Pologne. Et troisièmement, nous aiderons Immigration, Réfugiés et Citoyenneté Canada en assurant la liaison avec les forces de défense polonaises alors que IRCC travaille pour que des milliers d'autres Ukrainiens puissent continuer et se réinstaller au Canada. These efforts are being carried out as part of Operation Reassurance, Canada's contribution to NATO's assurance and deterrence measures in Central and Eastern Europe, which we recently expanded and extended over the past few months. Through Operation Reassurance and the international response to the war in Ukraine, we have shown how strong and effective we can be when we work on a united front. It is more important than ever for Canada to stay engaged with our allies and partners. And through Budget 2022, we have committed another $500 million worth of military aid to Ukraine. And that is on top of the $110 million that we have pledged thus far, so that our Ukrainian friends have the equipment that they need to keep fighting this war and to win. Nous fournissons également jusqu'à $1 milliard en nouvelles ressources étant prêt au gouvernement ukrainien pour assurer la résilience et sa stabilité, ainsi que des nouvelles mesures visant à réinstaller temporairement les Ukrainiens ici au Canada, dont une voie vers la résidence permanente pour les demandeurs admissibles. En collaboration avec la communauté internationale, nous avons également imposé une série de sanctions à l'encontre de Poutine et ceux qui le soutiennent. Nous continuons à soutenir le peuple ukrainien dans son ensemble et nous demandons des comptes à Poutine et à ceux qui le soutiennent. As this crisis continues to unfold, we will keep working with the international community to respond effectively, and we will keep ensuring that our military has what it needs to protect and to defend Canada. To this end, through Budget 2022, we announced more than $8 billion in new funding for our military and the Communications Security Establishment. We will also undertake a review of defense policy to ensure that we remain ready to meet current and emerging threats here at home and around the world. In many ways, the world is a much less safe place than it was 2 years ago and certainly 2 months ago. And we must take stock and take action in order to remain a valuable, reliable ally and partner for decades to come. To conclude, I cannot imagine the heartbreak felt by millions of Ukrainians who are forced to flee Putin's shelling and bombing, the heartbreak of thousands of Canadians with loved ones who remain in Ukraine now. But in the face of unspeakable acts of violence carried out against innocent civilians and of despicable acts and attacks on schools, apartment buildings, train stations in Kyiv, Kharkiv, Bucha, Mariupol, and of tragic desperation, Canadians and our Canadian Armed Forces will continue to step up and offer a safe haven and to welcome with open arms the people of Ukraine, our friends. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech. Je pourrais demander à des questions si vous voulez. I can answer questions if you like.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now start the question and answer period from journalists who are here. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre. Journalists will have one question and one follow-up, and please state your name and outlet.
Okay. David Aiken, Global News. Good morning, Minister. I wonder if you could just maybe speak to the genesis of this particular mission, whether it was through a request from Polish authorities. I know the Prime Minister has spoken quite often to Ukraine's Prime Minister, Ukraine's President. Did we offer? Can you give us a sense of how this mission sort of came together?
Well, I'll start with the basic point that Canada stands with Ukraine. We've been one of the lead countries within NATO in terms of support for Ukraine, and we will continue to provide comprehensive humanitarian, economic, and military aid. In terms of today's announcement, the Prime Minister and I have been in close touch with our counterparts in Poland, as well as with the NATO alliance writ large, and we are committing these additional resources under Operation Reassurance, which is our mission in support of NATO's eastern flank.
Thank you. There were some reports, I think, from the CSE that the Russians, part of the Russian disinformation campaign, is to generate images that seem to purport to show Canadian forces actively engaged in combat I guess, in Ukraine, in the theater. Thinking about that, I wonder if you can comment, does that raise the threat level for some of the folks who are about to deploy, or for our folks already overseas right now? Has the threat level for our forces changed? I know you can't get into too much detail on that, but can you speak to that in general terms?
From the very beginning, we have been unified as a NATO alliance that we will do whatever is needed to ensure that we are supporting Ukraine, and also that we are making our respective contributions on the ground to the NATO alliance. And this mission in Poland is part of that commitment, and we very much are aware of Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, that an attack on one is an attack on all. The threat level, of course, is one that we are constantly watching, and we will continue to do so. At the current time, we are confident that this is a mission that should be undertaken in the interests of humanitarian aid, in the interests of aiding our Polish allies, and in the interests of the NATO alliance writ large, as refugees are fleeing Ukraine, and this humanitarian support is needed in Poland immediately.
Thank you. Merci. Next question.
Hi, Minister. Tom Perry with CBC. You mentioned that there's going to be Ukrainian speakers going on this mission. I'm wondering if you can tell me how many of the people we're sending will be Ukrainian speakers, what they'll be doing. And as a second part of this question, you mentioned in the budget, or the budget talked about $500 million in further military aid for Ukraine. When do you think you're going to be getting some more detail on that? And if I could get you to answer in English and French, that'd be great.
Thank you so much for the question. On the first question regarding Ukrainian speakers, I will turn to Ryan. But on the second question, I have to admit I couldn't quite hear you. Can you speak
Sure.
right into
It was
the
about
mic?
the $500 million in weapons aid for Ukraine announced in the budget. When can we expect further details about what that's going to be?
Okay, I'll start with that, and then I'll hand over the mic on Ukrainian speakers in the forces. The budget, which came down just a week ago today, committed $500 million in military aid to Ukraine. That is on top of the $110 million of aid already that our government has committed. This aid should be conceived in various categories, which is how I think about it. The first category is CAF inventory, which we have largely drawn upon for the existing aid that we are sending. The second category is procurements from suppliers. We are actively engaged with a number of suppliers regarding additional procurements, and I will have more information to say about those discussions soon. I will say that they follow the type of negotiation and contract that we entered into for the cameras for drones that we announced a few weeks ago. We were asked by Ukraine directly to supply cameras for these drones. Within days, we had a contract in place and cameras sent over to Ukraine. That is the type of effort we will continue to do under that second category. And the third category of aid that we are examining is in conjunction with our allies, working together collaboratively with our allies in terms of possibly pooling our aid so that we can send over aid as efficiently as possible as a collective. And in that vein, we did have a donors conference with, which was hosted by the United Kingdom recently, and we are very much aligned as NATO allies to ensure that we are working efficiently as possible given the urgency of the situation and the fact that Minister Resnikov is in touch with me almost daily in terms of what is needed for Ukraine, and that's what I'm working to fulfill in terms of a list.
Could I get you to just repeat that briefly in French on the just.
Comme vous savez, nous avons déjà livré plus de 110 millions de dollars en aide létale et non létale pour l'Ukraine. Et ça, c'est important. Et maintenant, avec budget 2022, nous avons aussi décidé de livrer 500 millions de dollars en aide létale et non létale. Et aussi, nous pouvons penser cette aide dans 3 tranches. Premièrement, le ressource de la Force armée canadienne. Deuxièmement, les contrats avec les fournisseurs, comme le contrat pour les caméras, pour les drones. Et aussi, troisièmement, ça c'est les activités, les actions que nous allons prendre avec nos alliés et avec nos partenaires. Ça c'est les 3 tranches d'aide et les 3 tranches d'efforts que nous allons travailler avec pour cet effort, et je vais avoir autre information de l'autre aide dans les prochains jours. Et aussi maintenant, peut-être je vais passer la parole à mon collègue ici, Ryan Denning. Ryan?
Thank you, Minister. So if I understand the question correctly, you're asking how many Ukrainian speakers we will be sending over to theater. Is that correct, sir?
Exactly. How many, and I guess what role are they going to be playing in the operation?
So I will answer the question by saying that we have a very diverse force in the Canadian Armed Forces, and with that comes many different people with proficiency in different languages. As far as the number of folks that we are sending over to the operation, I can't answer that for you because I don't have those details in front of me. And as far as how they will be employed, I think when we send anyone to these different operations in different locations around the world, we try to ensure that they have the linguistic capability such that we can integrate better with the folks that we're trying to help. Thank you.
And Minister, just as a follow-up then, a review into the rapid release of former Navy Commander Danny Croucher found the military violated its own policy. How did that happen, and how will you prevent it from happening again?
Every single day, I continue to work with General Eyre and leaders across the Canadian Armed Forces to build a military where everyone feels safe, protected, and respected. And this is crucial to the Canadian Armed Forces mission to serve and protect Canadians. I am aware that there is a situation in terms of our policy where members are alleged to have violated professional standards but are legally entitled to a release. And I believe that is the situation that you are raising in your question. I will say that our processes need to be better aligned so that victims and survivors do feel safe, respected, and protected at work. We have the CPCC and Jenny Carignan that is working on a number of initiatives to ensure that members feel safe, protected, and respected at work. We are also awaiting the report of Madame Arbour that hopefully will speak to this issue. Thank you.
Can I just get you to repeat that in French, please?
Chaque jour, je travaille avec le chef de la défense majeure du Canada, General Air, et avec les leaders dans les forces armées canadiennes, de bâtir une militaire où tout le monde peut travailler avec les protections qu'on a besoin de travailler et protéger notre pays. Ça, c'est crucial pour la mission de notre pays et de nos forces armées canadiennes. Je connais qu'il y a une situation ici où c'est possible où un membre de les forces armées canadiennes peut-être violer les standards professionnels, mais en même temps peut être quitter les forces armées canadiennes. Et je pense que nous devons travailler de s'assurer que nos processus avec cet enjeu sont marche pour les membres de forces armées canadiennes qui sont des victimes et les survivants. Merci.
Thank you. Merci. Do we have any other questions? All right. Seeing none, this concludes today's press conference. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Merci d'être venu ici.
Merci.
Au revoir.